Hello and welcome to episode 13 of Only as Lonely, the podcast where I share my story of taking redundancy, going travelling and seeing some sights, taking some photos, playing some music, and all the funny little interactions in between. Thank you for joining me on this adventure. I hope you're enjoying the sights, the sounds and the story, especially if you're also checking out onlyaslonely.wordpress.com or YouTube to see photos, hear tracks, watch clips and all that jazz. Now, it's episode 13. Unlucky for some, right? But not you. No, not you gorgeous people. Oh no. For today, my friends, you're going to get 2 days in one episode. Why? Because I'm feeling very generous. Or if I'm being honest, there just wasn't enough material for one episode with 1 day, if I'm honest. You may remember that yesterday was whale watching. Watching a whale look like a log until it flicked its tail up in the air. Well, I'm still in Kaikoura and I'm about to meet a fellow adrenaline junkie. Basically, it was almost like bumping into a clone of me. So I also experience a lot of nature and I also attempt a feat of incredible human endurance. So strap yourselves in. Thank you for listening to my story and becoming a part of it. Right then, here we go. September the 23rd, 2009. I struggled to get up in the morning. I had to stick the heater on for an hour. Because I was on a proper campsite now with power, I was able to use the electric fan heater, which was very much appreciated because it was freezing. As is usually the case with me, I just vegged in bed and then ended up rushing around, cursing myself for not getting my arse into gear sooner. We're like, 12 years on? 13 years on from this, still the same. I had to be at the information centre car park to be collected for the kayaking. I got a pace on to get there in time, and when I got there, I was the only one there. I was thinking, have I missed him? Am I early? Am I on time? Where is everybody? I waited for a bit and then saw a 4x4 towing some kayaks come driving down the road in what seemed to be slow motion. It turned into the car park and I was greeted by Mick. I could tell just by the way he was that he was an extreme sports buff. It transpired that it was just me and Mick this morning. No one else had signed up. Bonus, I thought. But we were at the cusp of the tourist season. As the warmer weather was coming, Kaikoura would soon be heaving with visitors. So it was fortunate that I'd got this opportunity just to myself. As we headed towards the bay, near the tip of the peninsula, again in what seemed like slow motion all the way. I've seen quicker milk floats. Mick and I had small talk. To cement the idea of him being an extreme sports kind of dude, his vocabulary consisted of inserting the phrases cool and sweet airs into conversation a hell of a lot. Furthermore, he was also a snowboarding instructor and a thoroughly nice bloke. Instantly likeable, which makes it easy to put yourself, in a position of trust with him, especially when there's a risk of drowning, being attacked by seals, or even eaten by a sperm whale. We arrived at the bay, where there were no real discernible buildings, just car parking and hills. The beach was pebbly and uneven, and rocks were spread out like reaching fingers into the sea. I had to get ready by putting on this half Rain Mac, half Vivienne Westwood monstrosity.
Do you want to dress up looking like a vegana just for $1,000?
But the funky skirt did have a practical purpose because it fitted perfectly in place over the hole that I was going to be sat in the kayak, and it prevented any water from splashing into the hole and soaking my legs. I sat in the kayak and Mick pushed me forward into the water before climbing in behind me. He then showed me the way to paddle. I assumed I'd already know how to do it because, it's not rocket science, is it? You'd have to be pretty stupid to not be able to work a paddle. But I appreciated the guidance, all the same. So yeah, my technique wasn't exactly perfect, so much for my cockiness. My only concern was my shoulder, which hadn't fully healed yet from my mountain bike accident. I explained this to Mick about how I was heading down a pretty gnarly track before catching some major air dude. Yeah. He could tell that I too was a fellow adrenaline junkie. Alas, it would appear that Mick and we were kindred spirits, with a thirst for the rush of adrenaline, the addiction of looking fear in the eye and laughing at it, and the dream of Red Bull sponsorship. Yes, Mick and I were nothing short of extreme sports bros. Even though that was, the first time and the last time I ever went mountain biking. Mick also had previously had trouble with his shoulder, although his injury had been much worse than mine. In a snowboarding accident, he had actually popped his collarbone through his skin. He showed me the scar, like a badge of honour, and recommended an osteopath would be of benefit to me. I didn't have a scar. I wasn't feeling jealous, not that much. Sweet as, I said. Put it away, Mick. We paddled along in this two-man kayak, and it wasn't as easy as I thought. Maybe I was the only one paddling. My shoulder was burning, but I was committed to carrying on. I really wanted to experience this. We headed away from the shore, and Mick said we could catch some waves. Sweet as, I said. We would wait, side on to the small waves, and gently we would be lifted before steadily dropping as the current flowed beneath us. Then Mick would use his paddle to manoeuvre us into a better position, and when he saw the opportunity, he would tell me to paddle as hard as I could. The back of the kayak would lift in the air as I paddled like a madman, not even thinking about my shoulder anymore. We'd catch the wave, and then lifting our paddles above our heads, we were carried along by the small wave. It felt so fast. It was like flying towards the shore, wind in my face. We did this for a while, and then we paddled out towards some rocks that were a natural wave breaker. There must have been about 30 seals, all just chilling out. A couple of seals swam over to us to investigate, looking at us as if to say, "What are you doing round here?" They've got weird eyes. I filmed them with my point-and-shoot camera.
Oh, they're coming this way.
Yeah.
Look at that. This is like wildlife on one for me. This is. Here I am, just to prove this is me.
Hey.
This is Mick. Say hello to the UK.
Of you in the front there?
Yeah.
Seals in the background.
Yeah, so Wildlife on One was a BBC documentary series, BBC One, with David Attenborough. Mick hadn't got a clue what I was talking about, really. So that was wasted, wasn't it? Then we headed out and just chilled out for a bit. I was surprised at how far out we'd actually gone. It was really relaxing. I felt quite lucky to be able to have this moment with Mick, just the two of us. That sounds romantic. I don't mean it that way. But obviously, if there'd been a group of us, Mick would have been having to keep an eye out on everyone, and it may not have been such a chilled experience. We chatted about life, what it was like in the UK. It's funny how his perception of what I must have earned in my job in the UK was. He thought I'd be earning much more. And also we talked about the different property prices. God, that sounds boring, doesn't it? Property prices. Just two grown men, both adrenaline junkies, extreme bros, out on the ocean, talking about the state of the property market. Pretty rad. I'm sure you will agree. Looking back at the shore, it looked a good distance away, but it was great to see the bay, the reef, the green hills that follow the coast. And of course, it wouldn't be an accurate description if I failed to mention that there were mountains as well. After going around the reef, we caught waves back to the shore. My shoulder was aching by now, so as much as I would have liked to have stayed out there for a couple more hours, I felt like my shoulder really had enough. Mick dropped me off in town at about 11:30. I asked him straight, I said, Mick, listen, is there any chance that I can borrow your snowboarding instructor's jacket to attract some sexy bitches? He let me down gently. I'm guessing he felt that I didn't need to, as I naturally exuded that extreme sports non-stop adrenaline rush vibe that says, hey ladies, if my heart rate drops below 170 beats per minute, I must be in a coma or dead. I wished him all the best as he dashed off with the sweet as, cool as, gnarly speed of a golf cart with a flat battery. I grabbed some groceries and headed to the bus. I sat on the bench, facing the view from my bus, admiring the view and enjoying the sunlight. It was nice to just sit and do nothing. There was a creek not far in front of me. I fed my mates, the ducks, although it was a challenge to get the bread to them before the gulls would swoop in and nick it from right under their bills. I must have been there for a couple of hours, at least, with the tunes on my iPod helping me to lose myself. Then Steve and Julie returned to their van and had a chat to them. Steve had been swimming with the dolphins that morning. How was it? I asked. Cold, was the response. Obviously, that was the main thing he remembered. Not the experience of swimming with these amazing creatures. No, cold. If he'd have expressed, it was amazing, it was great, and then followed with, yeah, it was cold though, then it wouldn't have been so bad. But the fact that his whole experience was summed up with how cold it was made me wonder if I would actually enjoy this. We were, after all, at the very beginning of spring. The sea would be freezing cold. I had concerns that, what could potentially be a very special experience would be overshadowed and subsequently spoilt by how cold it would be and how blue I would become. So I headed into town to check if the seal swim was still on for the following day. They couldn't confirm because there was a possibility of bad weather, so I wouldn't actually find out until I arrived at the place the following morning. I went to the internet cafe and got chatting to an Irish chap called Colin and his girlfriend Anna. They had spent 12 months in Oz and were spending 12 months in New Zealand. Really nice people, again. Colin was from Belfast with a really thick accent. I really struggled to understand him at times.
Oh God, it's desperate. God, the mountains is brave and close now, right enough. Oh God, it's wild time of the snow, all right. But and these new shocks that I got as well. You see, I had to turn the hill just up to my I had to turn the hill up to my foot there, just so the shock would go longer. The mother got these trainer shock things there.
I told them how gorgeous I thought Kaikoura was, and they looked at each other, looked at me, and basically explained that if I thought this was nice, I haven't seen anything yet. They gave me a list of places to check out, including the scenic drive to Queenstown, Milford Sounds, Doubtful Sounds, Lake Tekapo, and Lake Wanaka. The thing is, I'd seen an advert for a local adventure park and a farm offering free digs and food if you work for them. And I was considering doing that because it would not only be an experience, it would be free. And I'd probably meet some fellow travellers and have a banter with them. Later that evening, I was in a turmoil, not knowing which way to go. I was writing my thought process into my journal as the camper van was rocking, buffeted by the howling wind. To carry on driving around or to experience working on a farm and adventure park. I looked at the map, looked at what dates I had to be at the gigs for, and came to the conclusion that I should just keep travelling. I was going to head across the island, down the west coast towards Queenstown. There were a couple of things I wanted to consider doing there. I also wanted to visit the Franz Josef Glacier. There would also be no rush then, and I could just plod along doing my thing. I finished the night by calling my pal Darren, using up all my phone credit and having a good banter with him. Talking to him always raised my spirits, hearing how happy he was to hear what I was doing and having a good laugh with him. I wrote in my journal that I wish he could experience this place. I knew he'd love it here. Now, as I've been out on the water today, I'm just going to play a track for you here, taken from my EP, featuring the absolutely amazing June Morey on piano. This is a song called Adrift. I wrote this based on an old friend of mine who he went on holiday with his girlfriend. They went out on a pedalo, and she was filming what was going on with a camcorder. This is back in the day with camcorders. And then she stopped and asked him if he felt that they were right together. Then they had this whole heavy conversation which basically led to their breakup. Fast forward, he was still a bit wounded, but he'd moved on to someone else, probably a bit too quickly. But he found a videotape in the flat and played it. And basically he saw it was a recording of that very conversation. Because she'd forgotten to stop recording, it was just a recording of her feet pedaling away. But he could hear the whole conversation and live it again. So, yeah, happy vibes. Here it is. This is a song called Adrift.
We sat on a paddle out at sea, and you kept the tape running. But you forgot as you filmed your fate. Then you turned to ask me something. And as we float together, we're floating in different ways. As you capture on tape the end of you and me. And I'm still sat here and I'm watching the videotape. As I hear it all, but watch your feet. Your last holiday with me. The space you left behind has been filled by another one, but it doesn't feel the same. It happens so quick whether right or wrong, yeah. So the cycle starts again. And as we float together, we're floating in different ways. As you capture on tape the end of you and me. And I'm still sat here and watching the videotape. As I hear it all, but watch your feet. Your last holiday with me. Different smile greets me now from the picture frame we bought. And this picture's pretty too. But this smile doesn't let me up beside like yours. But it's one I will get used to. And as we float together, we're floating in different ways. As you capture on tape the end of you and me. And I'm still sat here and I'm watching the videotape. As I hear it all, but at your feet, yeah. Your last holiday with me. Times like these, yeah, will never is I gotta concentrate on what will please me. And it might seem strange with how I feel, but times will change, yeah. Wounds will heal. Times will change. Times will change. Times will change. Times will change, yeah. Times will change, and wounds will heal.
Hope you enjoyed that. It's not mixed the best, but there's great energy in that track. It was recorded live in a single take. I absolutely loved performing with June, and I feel so blessed to have had the opportunity to collaborate with her. She's an incredible musician, lovely person too. I might share a bit more about how we met in another episode. September the 24th, 2009. It was cold, grey and miserable in the morning. I was not looking forward to getting in that cold water to swim with dolphins. As I was putting my trunks on, I considered saying goodbye to my testicles, as they would soon be having a sabbatical for a few days. So when I went to Encounter Kaikoura, or for today, a more suitable name, Encounter Castrato, pretty much. And when they said that it was being cancelled because the weather was so bad, despite my reaction of, oh, that's a shame, in reality, I was pretty relieved. I headed to the info centre to see what I could do instead. I was up for quad biking, but alas, they don't do it in bad weather. The girl behind the desk gave me a laminated sheet with all of the wet weather alternatives, but as much as I'm sure they are a roller coaster ride of thrills, spills and non-stop extreme excitement, which as we've established is right up my street, a cave tour and sheep shearing really didn't grab me. So I left at a loose end, in the drizzle. I called my Uncle John, and it was great to speak to him. I then popped into a souvenir shop and bought a little ornament. And in there, the lady suggested I go and see the baby seals in the waterfall north of Kaikoura. It was great to let chance meetings and conversations shape what I do on this trip. So I got back to the bus just in time to say goodbye to Steve and Julie, who were about to head off for the next part of their epic trip. I then headed north with the directions that the lady in the shop gave me. I followed the coastal road, and it didn't take long to find it. It was actually at the seal colony I had stopped to take photos of as I approached Kaikoura. I parked up, and sure enough, on the other side of the road, there was a path leading to a waterfall. I headed up the path, running parallel to a stream, through the greenery of the palms, ferns and bushes, up the track towards the waterfall. I passed other people, all with smiles on their faces. When I got there, it was one of the most spectacular things I think I've ever had the fortune to see. At the end of this path was a waterfall that was probably the height of a 3-story building. It wasn't particularly ferocious or wide. It was continuous, fast-flowing stream of just cold white. The rock face that it cascaded down came out towards me like a pair of open arms, ready to embrace, cupping the pool and covered with various trees, bushes and moss. Where I was standing, large rocks were clustered around the one edge of the pool, and the stream headed down towards the sea. There was a constant hiss from the water crashing down, but that was not where my focus was at. In the cool, fresh water were about 12 or so young seal pups, zipping around, jumping, splashing and larking about.
Action. Go, fellas. Jump. Go on. And they make their way down that stream to the sea. It's just me and the guys here. It's some pretty cool ass shit.
They didn't take any notice of me, and I didn't feel like I was intruding as I just sat there watching. I was astounded by this, and I'll be honest, I felt a bit emotional and privileged to have such a moment with these young pups. They tend to live in the sea, so it was unusual for them to spend time in fresh water. And I know I've said it many times before during this trip, but I'll say it again before long. But have a real experience of nature, unspoiled, beautiful, breathtaking, and to experience it in a way that's all for you and you alone is like nothing else you could imagine. It moves you, it humbles you, and you realise just how trivial so much of our lives are. You know, we're just a flicker of a flame on this planet in the grand scheme of things, and we can get caught up in such bullshit in our day-to-day. Step into a new world, a private view of untamed, unspoilt, natural beauty in a moment or two that's all for you, and it changes your perspective. I cherish that moment, and I probably will do for the rest of my life. People would come to the spot and have a look and then head off, including a couple of police officers. I'm glad to say that no arrests were made, but it was nice to see that the locals recognised it as something really special too, and they'd often stop by to check in on the youngsters. Even police officers would stop by to check in on the pups. I got my camera out and kept snapping away. The lighting was very dark though, so the camera struggled. I was messing about with the settings, opening the aperture as much as I could and raising the ISO, that's the camera's sensitivity to light. I tried using the flash, but I didn't like the results, and I thought it was intrusive and not natural to force the light onto the seal pups. I wanted real results. I literally took hundreds of shots, but only a fraction would be okay to use. They were moving around so much, there was a lot of blur and a lot of shake on the camera, and yeah, because of the low light, you see, you get more prone to camera shake. So as these young seals played, splashed and writhed around in the fresh water, I sat and watched them. I must have been there for a couple of hours. It was captivating, watching the dashing and splashing of the pups. One pup got out and scrambled up the rocks and into the trees. I don't know where he was off to. A couple of pups clambered out of the pool and started scrambling over the rocks of the stream to follow it down to the sea. They paid no attention to me. I was happy with that. I was happy to just blend into the background, if at all possible. It started to get cold, and then it began to sleet. I headed back to the holiday park, ate, and it was still early afternoon, so I decided it would be a good idea to don the waterproofs and boots and walk the peninsula. Why? Well, because I was an idiot who grossly underestimated the task ahead of me. Because on reflection, having measured the distance online, I can tell you that the distance was approximately 8.5 miles in total. But like the half-soaked idiot that I am, I thought it wouldn't take that long, really. I was clearly struggling with being medically gormless. I strolled through the town and then walked along the grey beach. At spots along the beach there were carved statues and memorials. As I walked through a park area next to the beach, I looked to my left towards the sea and noticed a very realistic statue of an adult seal just looking up at the sky. By the colour, I guessed it was carved out of stone. Having experienced the waterfall pups, I wanted to check out this statue. I stepped onto the beach and walked towards it, at which point it turned and looked right at me. I was less than 10 metres from a large adult seal. It was pretty big, clearly very powerful. We made eye contact, and I thought best to back off, keep a wide berth, keep my distance. The seal looked away and then pointed its nose to the sky. It wasn't sleeping. I don't know what it was doing. But it almost looked like it was in a state of meditation, stillness, relaxed and peaceful. Got my camera out, as you would do, took some shots. My second seal encounter of the day. Again, it was a great experience to be so close to this wild animal that was now just blatantly ignoring me. It was like a monochrome image with the dark grey seal and a grey beach and the grey skies. I continued my walk along the coast with my iPod on, listening to the sounds of Megadeth, albums which I used to listen to as a teenager. It looked like it was going to take longer than I thought, doing this walk. But I wasn't going to back off. Oh no. For I was now being powered by the sounds of metal. Head down, I marched on like an unstoppable force of stubbornness. On reflection, I should have listened to an album by Seal, really, shouldn't I? After a while, I had reached the bay where I had done the kayaking the day before. I continued to the very tip of the peninsula. The wind was blustering and it was raining. Ha! I laugh in the face of bad weather. A chap once said to me that there's no such thing as bad weather, only bad clothes, and he knew what he was talking about because he was a 26-year-old who was still in the Boy Scouts. Where to from here? I saw a path going up the hill to lead over the fields to the other side of the peninsula. So I climbed that steep track and into the fields. I saw some cows and stopped to give them some grass. I don't mean Sweet Mary Jane, by the way. Clearly, I was now a nature man. Nature was just drawn to me. We connected, nature and I, in a way that most city dwellers just wouldn't understand, I mean, don't get me wrong, though, I do love a good steak. I remember wondering, in some sort of cliche, should I be finding myself? Should I come back to the UK a new person? Some kind of spiritual growth, making me decide to have a complete overhaul of my life, my outlook and my beliefs. But then I thought that was putting some sort of pressure on myself for something to happen. I couldn't guarantee that something would happen in some kind of epiphany. I decided that the best approach would be to just go with the flow. I had to just enjoy the journey. Besides, I did feel like my confidence had grown. There was no doubt that having negotiated the world on my own will have some sort of change. How could it not? But it may or may not be the kind of spiritual awakening that's often the cliche about travelling. And, it's practically an impossibility that I'd be able to, grow dreadlocks. Follically challenged that I am and was at that time. Now, I sometimes forget that my life has been essentially an office worker who sits on his arse all day behind a desk. For some reason, I seem to think that I'm some sort of special forces guy, thinking that I have the mental willpower to overcome physical adversity and achieve incredible feats of endurance. Now, I don't know where this comes from. I remember as a 14-year-old that I decided to ride around the block 100 times on my bike one evening. It included a steep climb at pace. I was just riding my bike when I started going around a few times, when a seed was sown to see if I could do 100 laps. I would not be beaten. I completed it. Oh yes, at a pace, no doubt giving some neighbours a sense of déjà vu. I even had some kids sitting on the corner counting the laps that I'd completed until they got bored and went indoors to do something, normal or enjoyable. But I continued, proving to no one other than myself that this physical challenge wouldn't beat me. When I eventually completed it, I got off my bike and my legs were like jelly. I had to take my bike down the garden steps to the shed and then climb back up to the house where I collapsed on the living room floor. My mum asking me, "What's wrong with you?" "I just went round the block 100 times," I replied. "Oh, right," she said as if to say, "You weirdo." Years later, I did a charity event with my Thai boxing club. We were attempting to do 10,000 kicks for children in need. I don't mean we were kicking children in need, by the way. That's not very charitable, is it? They're down on their luck as it is. They don't need fully grown adults giving them tie kicks. So yeah, every kick that we was doing, kicking pads, every kick was full power. We did not hold back. Now, sure enough, we absolutely smashed the target. I was there with the guys for most of the day, going for it. I could hardly walk the next day. Even after this trip, I was part of a group divided into teams to complete the Three Peaks Challenge. The Three Peaks Challenge is where you have to climb the 3 highest peaks in the UK within 24 hours. So you've got Scafell Pike, which is in the Peak District in England, shoot up to Scotland, climb Ben Nevis, Mountain Ben Nevis, back down, shoot across to Wales and complete Snowdon, Mount Snowdon, all within 24 hours. So yeah, decided to join my mates, do the Three Peaks Challenge. Didn't train for it, but we absolutely smashed the other teams and were the only team to complete the 3 peaks in under 24 hours. Again, could hardly walk the next day. So you get the idea. If I decide I'm going for it, I will. But sometimes I'm an idiot and I tend to bite off more than I can chew. This walk around the peninsula, no exception. For some reason, I actually thought I could successfully walk the peninsula so late in the day. 8.5 bloody miles. I'd left the cows behind, stopped at a couple of viewpoints and read the historical information about the geology and the Maori history in the area. And then a little further on, I stopped thinking to myself that I was starting to get a bit tired now, wee bit tired. And furthermore, it wouldn't be long before it's dark. I didn't know how much further I had to go. I hadn't got a clue. I didn't want to be walking through the fields in the dark. Well, if I accidentally step off the cliff. So I decided to head back. I was still listening to my iPod, trying to be enthused by the tunes, but it was difficult to be distracted from my aching legs and now sore feet. It was hopeless. I was feeling miserable and berating myself. By the time I got back into town, it was now dark, and this Special Forces wannabe was hungry. This mortal form required sustenance. It wasn't tourist season yet, and so there weren't many places open. The town was pretty much dead. I headed into a bar with soaking waterproofs and boots, with a craving for some seafood. I should be able to get something quite nice and fresh, being on the coast, and it should be a taste sensation. I inquired about how much half a crayfish was. $65. That was enough for me to reconsider. So I settled for a basket of crappy battered seafood. Not the best, but I was hungry. So I got chatting to a couple who were also supposed to be swimming with the dolphins that day. Needless to say, they too were dubious about the cold water and were half pleased that it had been cancelled. I walked with them back to the holiday park, and it was nice to have some company and friendly conversation. I had decided that tomorrow I was going to head to the Franz Josef Glacier. My route was dictated by Steve and Julie, who recommended Arthur's Pass. I hadn't got a clue of the route, but my approach was to always consider recommends from people. It's not that I'm easily led, but I like the idea of someone saying, "Oh, you should check this place out," and then going, "Yeah, right then." It was my last night in Kaikoura, and I'd sleep well, no doubt. There you go. Did you enjoy that?
Do you like that?
2 days in one episode for you today. I hope that was comfortable for you. Sea kayaking. Now that was great fun. Highly recommend it if you ever get the chance to do it. I'm very lucky to have an instructor to myself. It was like private tuition. Mick was a lovely bloke, and we'll discover something funny about my encounter with Mick in a future episode. Not disappointed that I didn't get the chance to swim with dolphins. Would I like to swim with dolphins? Yes, I would. But I don't want to lose my dinkle in the process. Unless I'm trained by Wim Hof himself.
Okay, with your mind, follow your breath. Fully in. Letting go.
Wim Hof's the Iceman. Look him up if you don't know who he is. Breathe. Okay, right. But one of probably the greatest thing in this episode for me was the seal encounter. Those seal pups, incredible. And then I see the fully grown one on the beach. So, yeah, what a day. Of course, that bloody walk, stupid. What an idiot. But the funny thing is that I've discovered that the walk was 8.5 miles in total. I stopped and turned back at approximately 3.5 miles. So I wasn't that far from halfway, really. I did 7 miles of walking on that trek in the end. I mean, it's hardly the SAS trekking 10 miles across the Brecon Beacons, is it? It's pathetic. Pathetic in comparison. I don't think there's much more to say about these 2 days, really. I opened up when talking about the days as it is. You're probably sick of hearing my voice by now, aren't you? So, have you been to Kaikoura? What do you think? Have you had any experience in nature that was special and all for you? Have you undertaken a physical challenge like an unprepared, untrained, underestimating Gormless Pratt? Let me know. Leave a comment on onlyaslonely.wordpress.com or YouTube, or email me with your thoughts or questions to onlyaslonely@gmail.com. Please like, subscribe, share with someone who might enjoy the story, the travel, the photography, or the random musings of a bald man who embarked on a dream adventure when the chance came by. I wasn't fully bald back then, but you know. Thanks again for listening, and I'll see you next time where we hit the road, crossing the country from coast to coast. Bye-bye.
Do you want to dress up looking like a vegana just for $1,000?
Sweet as.